The 2023 NFL Draft is tomorrow, and before the picks are made official, I wanted to put out a predictive mock draft for the first round. Hi there, my name is Jonathan, and this is my trash heap, and this is a very different video. I understand that up to this point I've only done content relating to movies, but I absolutely adore the NFL Draft, and I wanted to put out a predictive mock of the first round. So, explaining that a little bit before we dive right into the picks. Predictive means what I think will happen based on buzz from media, scouting, whatnot. It's not personally what I would do. I'm going to put my personal mock draft in the description, but rather what I think will happen. Additionally, there are not going to be any trades in this because I'm not paying to have the PFF trade simulator, and it also gets tricky to predict trades because if somebody falls, who's trading up, and that gets too confusing to kind of work within a mock setting. So, no trades, just the first round, predictive, and with that in mind, let's kick this off with pick number 1 at the Carolina Panthers. And it should surprise no one that the first pick in the draft is going to be Bryce Young. I think at this point, if anybody tries to mock anything differently to the Panthers, they're just doing it for the clicks. Bryce Young is the best quarterback prospect in this class, and all signs indicate that he is going number 1 overall. So let's move on to number 2, the Texans, who I have taking Will Anderson in this mock draft. Now, I personally think the Texans should take C.J. Stroud. I think they have to get a better quarterback than Davis Mills. They cannot afford to sit on Davis Mills or whoever they want to try and get from free agency. They need to upgrade that position, but there's been a lot of buzz that if Bryce Young's off the board, which he almost certainly will be, they're going to pass on a quarterback and they're going to go best defensive player available. Some people want to put Tyree Wilson here, but I think Will Anderson is far and away the best prospect in this class and certainly a better prospect than Tyree Wilson. So we're taking Will Anderson at 2, but not to be too critical of Tyree Wilson, we have him going to the Cardinals at 3. And the Cardinals could go quite a few different directions here. There's been reports coming out that Kyler Murray really likes Paris Johnson, and he wants the Cardinals to take him to protect him. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Paris Johnson's worth the 3rd overall pick. They could use a corner, but compared to last year's class where you had Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner go 3 and 4, I do like the top corners in this class, but they aren't on the same level as those two. So ultimately, I say address another pressing need, edge rush, take Tyree Wilson, and you can continue to build with the other picks that you have in the 2nd and the 3rd round. Maybe add to the offense, be it line or some type of receiving help with Hopkins on the way out. But the Cardinals take Tyree Wilson. And then the Colts take Will Levis, which absolutely breaks my heart for several reasons. I do not think Will Levis is as good as people have hyped him up to be. I think he has consistently been the most overrated quarterback in college football and in the draft process. But everything is pointing towards the Colts liking Will Levis the most. And I think that the Colts have been the absolute worst team when it comes to quarterback management in the past few years because they refuse to get younger at the position. And yes, they're taking one of the older quarterback prospects in this class at 24 years old, but he's still going to be a rookie. The Colts have cycled through so many veteran quarterbacks, be it Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. They do not have a set starter that they can use. Since Andrew Luck retired, they have started a different quarterback at the beginning of every season, and that's just not how you succeed. I personally would take Anthony Richardson here. I think Shane Steichen could develop Richardson incredibly well. Look at what he did with Jalen Hurts. But everything that I've heard has pointed towards the Colts liking Will Levis the most, so they take him here. But Anthony Richardson does not fall much farther because the Seahawks scoop him up at 5, and to me, this would just be an ideal situation. You have Geno Smith signed to a 3-year deal. And while I do like Geno Smith, he isn't the long-term answer for your franchise. You take the most athletically gifted quarterback or debatably prospect in the class, have him sit behind Geno, learn the system, and then when Geno leaves, maybe he leaves next year, you void the rest of his deal. Maybe you play something around with that. When Geno Smith is gone, you are going to have Anthony Richardson, Kenneth Walker, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf, and potentially more weapons that you take in this class. Maybe you were able to pick up Jalen Hyatt in the second round. That, to me, is too tempting of an offer, and particularly with Richardson being as gifted as he is, and the potential that he has, if he can develop, is too enticing of a pick. The Seahawks take Richardson at 5. The Lions have a bevy of options that they could go with here, but ultimately I think corner, especially with having just recently traded away Jeff Okudah, is their most pressing need. So they take my number 1 corner, Devon Witherspoon, and to me this is just, it's a need, and it is a talent thing. Devon Witherspoon is great, and he immediately slides in to start. Now, of course, the question would be Devon Witherspoon or Christian Gonzalez. Well, the Raiders take Christian Gonzalez with pick 7, and you realistically could swap these. You might be wondering why the Raiders didn't take C.J. Stroud, and this is where it gets niche with the predictive part of this mock draft. There is a lot of buzz going around that C.J. Stroud is going to slip. He's going to fall. He is not going to go as high as people are saying he's going to go. Do I personally buy that? No. You're going to see in the description that C.J. Stroud is going to be my number 2 overall pick. But if these rumors and if this buzz is to be believed, the Raiders might not take him. The Raiders might think, hey, we just signed Jimmy G to a 3-year, $67 million deal. We don't really need to go quarterback right now. We're going to just keep fixing the secondary. I understand that this, it doesn't make much sense. But with the rumors and the buzz going around, that's what we're looking at here for a predictive mock. So we're going to go Christian Gonzalez for the Raiders. The Falcons at number 8 are going to take Jalen Carter, because Jalen Carter, as I said earlier about Will Anderson's one of the, far and away the best prospect in this class, and that's because he doesn't have the off-the-field concerns that Carter does. If Carter didn't have the off-the-field concerns, I would firmly say, yeah, Carter's the best prospect in this class, one of the best we've seen in a while. But due to the off-the-field stuff, he does slip a little bit, but I can't imagine him falling much farther than this. I considered going Bijan Robinson here, but ultimately I think with how dreadful the Falcons' pass rush and sack rate has been the last few years, they just cannot afford to continue to have that level of futility on the defensive side of the ball. So they add debatably the best prospect in the class at number 8. At number 9, the Bears take Paris Johnson, which makes the most sense. You have to protect Justin Fields. He is, still young in his development. You need to surround him with talent. You got him DJ Moore in a trade. Add a franchise tackle to keep him upright. The Eagles opt to take Bijan Robinson at 10, and this is the pick that I probably have the least amount of confidence in, simply because it is so hard to predict where Bijan Robinson is going to go. He could go as high as 8 to the Falcons, like we just talked about, or he could go as late as 26 to the Cowboys. But my logic and the predictive, there's the predictive part of this goes a little bit out of the window here. But why I think this would be a good pick is Bijan is the best prospect at running back that we've seen since Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley went at 2. Bijan Robinson's not going to go at pick 2, but you just signed Jalen Hurts to a lucrative contract to keep him as your franchise quarterback. Miles Sanders is on the Panthers now. What better way to help your franchise quarterback than to give him a franchise running back, potentially, one of the most talented prospects we've seen in the last 5 years? The Eagles take Bijan Robinson, and this next pick is something that I did have to think about for a bit, but I do have the Titans taking Peter Skoronski instead of C.J. Stroud. And why do I have that? Well, I thought, the Titans are going to want to take a quarterback at 11 because Tannehill's not that great and Willis has fallen out of favor, supposedly. Lot of buzz saying, yeah, they don't really like Stroud. They're not going to take Stroud. If he's there, they're probably passing on him. How much of that is true remains to be seen if Stroud even falls this far in the actual draft. The other biggest concern that the Titans have is that O-line, which is not good and has gotten even worse with the departure of Taylor Lewan. So here I have the Titans grabbing the best available tackle or guard, depending on how you want to look at Skoronski, but they grab a critical O-line piece and they insert him into the starting lineup. And defying all logic, the Texans are able to land C.J. Stroud at pick number 12 because they say he's going to slide, and if he does slide, I think the Texans would be foolish to pass on him twice. So, although this is predictive, it is hard for me to assume that they will be able to pass on him at 2 and still land him at 12. I do think if they want to attempt to do that, they're going to have to trade up, because you have to think that some other team is going to be calling one of the teams in the top 10 to trade up to get Stroud. Maybe the Commanders really want to get Stroud because they're not super confident in Sam Howell. They see him slipping. Maybe the Bucks want to get a bona fide starter. Vikings even. I don't think that this is super likely, but since this is predictive and they said Stroud's going to slip, I can't have him fall any farther than this. The Texans grab him at 12, which is probably one of the easiest picks of all time ever. The Green Bay Packers finally make the decision of taking a weapon in the first round right after Aaron Rodgers leaves, and they're going to take Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, look, I am a Packers fan. I'd like to put this out there first. However, I did not, rig the draft to have Jackson Smith-Njigba fall here. I've heard that he might be gone by 10. He might not make it to 13. But if he does, I think the Packers absolutely have to pounce on Jackson Smith-Njigba. Zay Flowers would also be a good option. If Smith-Njigba is gone at this point, I would not hate Zay Flowers. I also wouldn't necessarily hate one of the tight ends. But Smith-Njigba is mostly regarded as the consensus number 1 wide receiver in this class, and he fills what the Packers would need perfectly, which is a slot route technician. He would be an ideal fit at 13 to help ease Jordan Love into the starting role. And ultimately, I think if he's here at 13, the value is too good to pass on. At 14, the Patriots are going to take Darnell Wright, tackle out of Tennessee. And there's been talk of Belichick having beef with Mac Jones. He doesn't really like him that much anymore. What's the deal with that? I don't think that here they would even consider taking the replacement for Mac, especially if this is how the board falls, because you're looking at Hendon Hooker, who won't even be able to play his rookie year more than likely, at least the full rookie year. So I think we're going to kind of buttress those rumors and not really take that into consideration here. Instead, they take a plug-and-play right tackle who can instantly make their line a little bit better. And yeah, I think taking a tackle here is a logical pick. The Jets also go tackle. They take Broderick Jones. This is another one of those where you could swap the players, like with Witherspoon and Gonzalez. The Jets' number 1 priority absolutely has to be to protect Aaron Rodgers. After they acquire him in the trade, finally, you have to protect Aaron Rodgers, and their tackle situation has been murky at best between Mekhi Becton and I think George Fant is the other one. George Fant's 38, or maybe it's DeJuan Brown. It's one of those two. I can't remember at the present moment, but they have a 38-year-old tackle and a tackle who is constantly injured. They cannot afford to keep playing that, especially with Aaron Rodgers coming to town. The Commanders is the first pick that I did seriously consider taking Hendon Hooker with, but I don't think that you have Sam Howell, and I understand that he was a 5th-round pick, so that doesn't mean you don't owe him you don't owe him anything, really. You didn't spend that much capital on him. You don't have to play him, but I think he showed enough near the end of last year to warrant at least a shot. So here I decided to grab Joey Porter. And this is just it's a filling a need. You need a corner. You grab the best one available, which to me is Joey Porter. You have to add to the defense. Now, it came out today that they aren't going to be exercising Chase Young's 5th-year option, so potentially edge rusher could be in the cards here, but I don't think that that's necessarily the biggest need at the present moment. So they grab Joey Porter to help out the secondary. And then the Steelers, at pick 17, are going to take DeJuan Jones, which, again, it's a need. You need to get a better O-line for Kenny Pickett and Najee Harris. And I think taking a swing on somebody who is physically gifted as DeJuan Jones is, the incredible wingspan, the 6'8" height, I think it's a bit, I don't want to necessarily call DeJuan Jones a gamble of a pick, but you're looking at the traits and you're saying, all right, we want traits in our tackle, and that's what we're going to do here. Steelers take DeWan Jones at 17. Pick 18, we have the Lions taking Dalton Kincaid, which, because of the TJ Hawkinson midseason trade, I think makes the most sense. The Lions have one of the most deadly offenses in the league. Obviously, with Jameson Williams being suspended for 6 games due to gambling, which is just a boneheaded move on his part. The offense will take a bit to get fully going for the season, but you have to add a tight end at some point, you would think, for the Lions, and Dalton Kincaid is the best receiving option of the tight ends, so he rounds out what is this very, very, very explosive offense. However, if Bijan was on the board, I wouldn't necessarily hate going with him. The Bucs at 19 are going to take Deonte Banks. Again, considered Hendon Hooker here, but I think past the top 2 corners on the Bucs roster, there is very little talent. I mean, you have Zion McCollum maybe is your 3rd best corner, but I think you need to go ahead and take Deonte Banks, who I think is the last of the really, really good, the tier 1 corners in this class. And he's also the last corner going in the first round, spoiler, but I think you need to go ahead and take Deonte Banks, take a good, solid corner to add into your room. The Seahawks, this pick I did have some trouble with because there's a bevy of ways that they could go, but ultimately I settled on Cyrus Torrence because the Seahawks were absolutely money last year, taking Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas to round out their tackle situation. So here they decided to go ahead and add the best guard, in my opinion, in the class to continue to bolster that line for Kenneth Walker to run behind. And in this scenario, they reunite Torrence with Richardson, who looks to be the future of the franchise. And then at 21, the Chargers are going to take Zay Flowers. The explanation here is very simple. Justin Herbert needs a deep speed threat, and that is exactly what Zay Flowers is. The Ravens at 22 are going to go with Quentin Johnston out of TCU. Quentin Johnston's been sliding a lot. Some mocks that I've seen don't even have him going in the first, which I don't think is going to happen. But Odell Beckham is a good receiver, and it's a good addition for Lamar. But you have him, you have Rashad Bateman, and there's not much else talent on that roster. You need to go ahead and get somebody else. And I think even though Quentin Johnston isn't quite as polished as you would like a guy of his size to be, I think you can teach what he needs, and I think that they would love to take a weapon, a unique talent like Quentin Johnston to help Lamar Jackson out. Finally, I'm going to shut up about Hendon Hooker because the Vikings are going to go ahead and take him at 23, and me personally, I don't know if I would take Hendon Hooker in the first round at all. I've yet to decide if I'm going to in my personal mock draft. That's going to be in the description. I have not yet done that, but there's so much talk about Hendon Hooker's not going to make it out of the top 15 picks. He's not going to make it past the Commanders. He's not going to make it past 20. Blah 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 blah. He's probably going to get his name called tomorrow night, and I think there's so much risk there between a 25-year-old coming off of an ACL injury. It's a risk. You're taking a very big risk if you take Hendon Hooker, but I don't think Kirk Cousins is that great. I think he's fine, but we've seen that he can't really perform in the big games, and you're going to eventually need somebody who is at least more talented, and I think Hendon Hooker is more talented. He does make, as he says, the big boy throws. He can do that. So the Vikings take Hooker at 23 to be the apparent replacement for Kirk Cousins. The Jaguars take Brian Branch at 24, and this is even assuming if they add Budda Baker. I still think that this would be the most logical pick for them because their safety room is terrible. Well, terrible may be a bit of a stretch. Between Andrew Wingard, Rayshawn Jenkins, and Andre Sisco, there's room to improve. And certainly if you add in the best safety in the draft and one of the better safeties in the league in Budda Baker, I mean, again, that has not happened at the time of this recording. It is all talk still. But even if you just add in Brian Branch, he can also immediately play nickel for you, which is one of their bigger needs. That's why, occasionally you'll see people go with, Keely Ringo here, or even Cam Smith, and sometimes there was a bit back where Clark Phillips, when he was still talked about as a first-round prospect, would be here, but Brian Branch, to me, if he falls to this point, is the ideal fit for the Jags. The Giants was one of the more difficult picks that I had to make because I wanted to go corner, but there wasn't any value for me here, or there's good enough value here. Wanted to go receiver, but the receivers on the board that would be worth the first-round pick at this point are just too similar to what they have. So ultimately, I settled on Minnesota center Michael Schmitz. And this is, again, one of those plug-and-play, instant impact type players for a team, this one being the Giants. So center is not a sexy pick to take in the first round. I understand that, but you want to keep bolstering that O-line. Saquon's on the franchise tag. Give him a line to run behind and maybe let him go to work. And you can still add receiver in the next couple of rounds. This is a solid enough receiver class that there will be talent there. So Michael Schmitz goes to the Giants. Cowboys, I went with Michael Mayer. I don't necessarily love this pick, but I feel like Jerry Jones won't be able to resist himself if a talent like this is on the board at a position of relative need. So they take what I think is the most complete tight end prospect in the class in Michael Mayer, and they just continue to add to that offense, give Dak another option to throw to, because eventually Dak's going to have to start having more success in Dallas, or they may be looking for his replacement. The Bills go Nolan Smith, which is a pick that I find interesting. I considered a few different things here. I thought about maybe adding a weapon, be it receiver, or I think I considered briefly running back, but I'm not sold on Jahmyr Gibbs potentially going in the first, and certainly not to the Bills. I considered maybe going defensive interior, Ozzie Smith maybe, but the Bills showed that when Von Miller went down last year, their pass rush was not good. And also, they kind of relied heavily on him. So I decided that Nolan Smith would help to alleviate that option. The only other really logical pick here, I think, would be offensive line, because they did look pretty awful against the Bengals. But I think you got to improve the trenches somehow, so we're going to go with Nolan Smith. Speaking of offensive line, the Bengals have Anton Harrison fall right into their laps, and, well, maybe you could argue that this should be tight end, or maybe even corner if you're higher on Emmanuel Forbes or Cam Smith. I think with Jonah Williams just being injured and not really reliable for the Bengals as of always, kind of, you get Orlando Brown in free agency, you grab Anton Harrison, and you immediately have your bookend tackles. And then you can, in the rest of the draft, kind of focus on getting weapons or defensive building. So Anton Harrison goes at 28. The Saints at 29 take Myles Murphy, who I think should go a hell of a lot higher than this. I think he's better than pick 29. I think he should be a top 15 pick. But there's been a lot of talk of him not necessarily going quite as high. And I think with the Saints losing Marcus Davenport and Cam Jordan getting older, they need to add some edge rushing help. And I think if Myles Murphy is here at this pick, this would be insane value. The Eagles at 30 are going to go Lucas Van Ness, which is similar enough to Murphy in the sense of he's really good. I'm not as high on Van Ness as some people are. Some people are saying, like, oh, the Bears are going to take him at 9. And I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with that. But I think if he is here, the Eagles have shown that they will stock up on positions, even if it seems like they're already fine enough at that position. And I think Van Ness would be an incredible pick at 30 to keep adding to that pass rush rotation, which you can never have too many pass rushers. You can always keep rotating and rotating and rotating. And with pick 31, the Chiefs, final pick of the draft, they had a lot of different ways that they could go here, but I took the luxury pick, the flashy pick. The Chiefs add Jordan Addison to an already lethal offense, and the league continues to hate themselves for allowing the Chiefs to be this good. So that is the first round of my predictive 2023 mock draft. Again, this is what I think will happen. Some of these picks, again, I'm not super sure on, like the CJ Stroud at 12, I hate. But if he's there, I think that it's impossible to pass on him at that point. My personal one will be in the description below, so check that out. If you want to, say I think this, that, and the other, or if you're watching this after the draft and this ends up being horribly wrong, let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.